We have three presenters today. I would like to introduce Dr. Jean Sheldon and Jean is a professor at Pacific Union College, and we just honored her this morning at the Women's Breakfast for her years of service and scholarly contributions. We're very proud to have a lady who has contributed a lot to theological thought in our church. And I'm honored to present Jean to you, and her paper is titled, Is Cosmic Conflict Biblical?
For a number of decades, some Adventist scholars and many scholars in general have maintained that the Bible does not support a cosmic conflict. Various reasons have been given for this belief, but I will list only some of them here. First, moral dualism is muted by a monotheistic bias throughout much of the Hebrew Bible. Second, much of Adventist biblical support is mythic and thus does not count as evidence. Third, the kings of Isaiah 14, including verses 12 to 20 and Ezekiel 28 to 11 to 19, are human and thus do not refer to the angelic being, traditionally called Lucifer, who fell from heaven. Fourth, the Satan of the book of Job was Yahweh's official accuser who accused faulty human beings on earth. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's off.
Can you hear me now?
It's off.
It's off. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let me read that again. The Satan of the book of Job was Yahweh's official accuser who accused faulty human beings on earth, not Yahweh's enemy. Due to lack of space, I will deal with just two of these problems, one of them briefly. The issue of mythological texts, and the two kings of Ezekiel and Isaiah 14. Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. And so we'll deal with mythology first. In common parlance, myth refers to something that is presumably untrue. Yet in academic circles and in some dictionaries and works that treat mythology, the definition is a little more open to the idea of myth as a usually traditional story of ostensibly historical events that serves to unfold part of the worldview of a people to explain a practice, belief, or natural phenomenon. The word ostensibly suggests apparently or reportedly, but perhaps not actually. This view of myth allows for the possibility for some myths of being true. If you look at the Greek, mythos means story. And we can also say, it was just a story. And we know what we mean by that. But not all stories are just a story. And to so many Adventists, the term myth is concerning due to the common connotation it has had. Yet to early Christians, two kings represent a valid story of a fall from heaven by a covering cherub that explains the rise of rebellion in heaven and the cherub's doom. Indeed, the Bible contains mythopoeic language that sometimes borders on mythology, without the concerns some in modern times have. The ancient readers of the Bible had no problem with mythological remnants in the Hebrew Bible. The word myth originated in the Greek language and culture as first word, speech, and secondly as story, narrative. The closest word in Hebrew to myth is that of mashal, which can mean proverb or parable. To the ancient Hebrew mind, Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 contain stories with meaning and purpose, and their larger reality remained unquestioned. Naturally, the educated Western mind finds this problematic. Modern minds tend to analyze and interpret the Bible through a modern lens, not those of ancient pre-modern minds. Perhaps the shift in Western thought by many to postmodern thinking should warn us not to leave in the dustbins of time how ancients thought. We need this grounding as we come to the two kings who fell, poetically described by two prophets, Isaiah and Ezekiel. These verses, Isaiah 14:12-20, form a part of what is often translated as a taunt song, Hebrew mashal, a word that can also mean parable. This song follows an oracle about Babylon in which the prophet describes Yahweh destroying the land via the Medes because of its pride and tyranny. Israel will take their oppressors captives as slaves and rule. Babylon will take their oppressive captives as slaves and rule over them. Against this background emerges the taunt, or in terms of content, a lament over the king of Babylon. Here's my translation of Isaiah 14:4-20. And you shall lift up the lament, mashal, over the king of Babylon, and you shall say, how has the oppressor ceased? How the insolent fury has stopped? Yahweh has broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers that struck down the people in anger and with continuous blows, that ruled the earth in wrath with unrestrained persecution. The whole earth rests and is silent. They break forth into singing. Even the cypresses rejoice over you, the cedars of Lebanon saying, since you have been laid low, no one comes up against us to cut us down. Sheol from beneath is agitated over you to meet you when you come. It arouses the Raphaim for you, the he-goats of the earth. All the kings of the nations get up from their thrones. All of them respond and say to you, indeed, you have become like us. You have become like us. There's two different Hebrew words represented there. So far, the song seems to describe an earthly royal oppressor who gets slain either in battle or by assassination. Very few, if any, indicators, and it foreshadows a cosmic revel until verse 12. How are you fallen from heaven, Halel ben Shachar? How are you cut down to the ground, you who defeated all the nations? It was you who said in your heart, I will ascend to heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the far north, Shapon. I will ascend on the backs of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High, Elyon. But to Sheol you are brought down, to the depths of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you. They will try to understand you. Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness, who destroyed its cities, and who did not let his prisoners go home? All of the kings of the nations, all of them in glory, each in his home. Clearly the passage, I'm sorry, I didn't read it all. It talks about him being cast out of his tomb, clothed with the dead, and thus thrust with the sword. I'm trying to read fast because this paper is too long. So excuse me when I try to just coach you a little. Clearly the passage shifts from an earthly king to one associated with the cosmic realm, and then back to the earthly king. Yet its focus on an astral being in 14:12-15 suggests that the lament includes more than just an earthly king. On the one hand, scholars point out that this king of Babylon tries to deify himself. It is true that early Mesopotamians understood that kingship came down from heaven, but only relatively rarely were kings deified or self-deified. Nevertheless, in some, Mesopotamian kingship was consistently treated as if infused by the divine, sacral kingship being the constant in which all rulers participated. As such, kingship itself was always divine, but the divinization of individual kings occurred only in times when it was strategically needed. On the other hand, in the Syrian royal tradition, where gods do not bear a divinatory indicator like the Dinger sign, one could argue that royalty and common people alike were deified upon death. The evidence for this comes from archaeological discoveries of the dead were kept and how they were treated. Under residential houses in Ugarit were well-built family vaults provided with installations for supplying the needs of the dead, treating them at least partially like the gods. This cannot possibly apply, however, to the king of Babylon, since he is treated in death as an abhorrent corpse without a burial. Turning more closely to the Israelite milieu, scholars note a clearly Canaanite background behind the name Hillel ben Shakar, since Hillel's father, Shakar, is known from Ugaritic literature as an astral deity. This has led some scholars to conclude that Hillel was also an astral deity, though no such name has been found in Northwest Semitic. Shakar is clearly an astral deity in Ugaritic texts and was often paired with Shakar wa Shalim with the meanings dawn and dusk. For this reason, scholars have examined other astral deities, chief of which is probably Astar. Astar was supposed to take Baal's place when he was followed by Mot, death, but found that his diminutive size did not fit Baal's throne. He decided not to reign in Baal's place, so he descended from the throne. He next became king of the earth, possibly out of the netherworld. Astar's link to the cosmic Hillel of Isaiah 14 is weak. At best, it can be considered a reflex of a Canaanite myth of a rebel king that got expelled from heavens, but the differences, the lack of rebellion and attempted astral supremacy, along with voluntary choice and lack of fall into disgrace, suggests that the original myth that serves its background did not include the story of Astar. While certainly Astar is astral, as is Hillel, nothing in Astar's myth suggests that he sought to raise his throne above the stars of El or sit on the mount of Safon. Much more than Astar's myth is at work in Isaiah 14, 12 to 15. The centrally positioned lament in Isaiah 14, 12 to 15 appears to bear identifiers of the cosmic realm. In addition to Hillel's full name, this figure falls from heaven, identifying him as having actually made the ascent to that place. Only a few mortals in ancient Mesopotamia had made or attempted to make the ascent to heaven. For example, Etana, a childless king, and Adapa the sage. Hillel states that he will lift up his throne above the stars, indicating that he will rule them. Generally, in most Semitic cultures, the stars were gods. Indeed, in cuneiform, the original sign for God was a star. Evidence in the Bible suggests the interests of monotheism. Stars represented heavenly beings who, along with the children of God, celebrated the foundations of creation in Job 38, 5 and 6. Hillel proclaims that he will sit on the Mount of Assembly in Zahon. In ancient Assyria, Baal-Hadad was understood to live in this mountain. The assembly of the gods is similar to the council of Yahweh in Job 1 and 2 that included the children of God, or the winged creatures of Isaiah 6:2. The following line of Isaiah 14 has been translated as, I will ascend to the tops of the clouds, with the assumption that Hillel is ascending even higher than the stars. In the Hebrew, however, a literal translation would read, I will ascend on the backs of the clouds. This is a clear allusion to Baal, the cloud rider. The next line, I will make myself like the Most High, recalls both Genesis 1:26, where God says, let us make human according to our likeness, and Genesis 3:5, where the serpent tells the woman that if she will eat of the tree of knowledge, she will be like God. The chief difference is that in the case of Hillel, the hithpa'el form of the verb is used with the meaning, I will make myself like, and I use ellipses there. Nevertheless, Hillel may recall the story of Eve. As soon as these words are out of Hillel's mouth, he is brought down to Sheol. This verse marks the end of the cosmic or celestial aspects of Isaiah 14, with the rest of the passage worded entirely anthropomorphically. Obviously, Hillel has plunged to the depths of shame and disgrace. It is time to turn to the other passage regarding the cosmic fall. And I'm going to take the risk of confusing you. If you want to look up on the website of ASRS, you will find my paper there. And if you want to follow along, you can. So I'm going to not read this passage, it's quite long. But it has the same structure as Isaiah 14, in that you have first a lament about the king of Tyre, the literal king of Tyre. And then you have this more cosmic structure and content. And then you again come back to earth with another part of the lament. The lament contains many similarities to Isaiah 14:12 to 15. As with Isaiah's lament, the background of the lament is over the king of Tyre lies in Canaanite mythological language and story. Like Isaiah's lament, it has a foreground that addresses the human prince in the royal house, and I've already stated that, so I'm going to skip down. The text also contains similar themes to Isaiah 14, the speeches of the cosmic kings, the attempt of each king to rise to divinity, a description of the rise to power or wealth, a demonstration or declaration or evidence of both kings' pride, their use of violence, their downfall into an ignominious death. While the king of Babylon rises to the heights of heaven through power, the king of Tyre gains preeminence through trade and wealth. Both laments exhibit cosmic elements that suggest supernatural beings in supernatural settings. More similarities will be noted next as analysis takes place of the cosmic elements in Ezekiel 28:11 to 19. In the lament over the king of Tyre, he is said once to bend seal of likeness or resemblance, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Here I veer away from the steadfast tradition of English translations of translating the Hebrew word talkni as perfection. I searched almost every version on Bible Gateway and found that none of them veered from perfection. However, many of these contained a footnote for perfection that stated Hebrew obscure. It seems that all the translators of the Hebrew Bible virtually throughout the history of the English Bible have followed the King James Version. As Moshe Greenberg points out, the Greek, Syriac, and Vulgate seem to be taknit as tabnit, seal impression of likeness, along with some Hebrew witnesses. As I show in the footnote below, the word tabnit is more likely within the context of Ezekiel 28:11-19 to 19 than the word toknit in the Masoretic text. As a variant, it has enough support for consideration. Reading tabnit instead of toknit allows the reader to suggest that the king of Tyre bore the likeness to God, whereas the king of Babylon states that he will become like God. So there's that similarity. This may also reflect the Imago Dei of Genesis 1:26 to 27. Returning to the other cosmic elements in the Ezekiel lament, the placement of the cosmic king of Tyre in Eden, the garden of God, while tied to the earth, still provides a cosmological connection to Genesis 2, since God is said to walk about in the garden shortly after sin began. Most of the parallels are similar except for something not very Canaanite. Just as the king of Tyre is said to be a resemblance as in a seal, but then falls, so even more like the king of Babylon, first man and woman seek to be like God by eating the divinely forbidden fruit and lose their garden home. In what seems to be a judgment scene, the unique aspect involves the Yahweh God who descends to the earth to meet them and talk with them about what they have done, during which he curses only the serpent and the ground. In addition, God gives them a promise of victory over the trickster in the garden. Here cosmology comes to earth to try to restore the fallen. Verse 14 states, "You were an anointed covering cherub." A cherub in biblical description was a being or creature that had wings. While cherubim were woven into the walls of the tabernacle setting, more similarities will be noted as the analysis takes place of the cosmic elements in Ezekiel 28:11 to 19. In the lament over the king of Tyre, he is said to have been once a sealed likeness or resemblance, full of wisdom and perfect of beauty. I think I page got duplicated. There's some duplication here. Excuse me while I get my bearings. Okay. Returning to the cosmic elements in Ezekiel's lament, the placement of the cosmic king of Tyre in Eden, the garden of God, while tied to earth, still provides a cosmological connection to Genesis 2, since, I think I read that. Verse 14 states, you were an anointed covering cherub. A cherub in biblical description was a being or creature that had wings. Well, cherubim were woven into the tabernacles, the curtains. Is my time up? So basically what I try to show is that the cosmological parts of these are definitely tied to heavenly realms. And it's a very short piece. Yes, you have the earthly twice before and after, but you have the cosmic realms. There's plenty of evidence for that. And so I believe that, and I'll turn to my conclusion. In the two laments, one over a human king or the other over a cosmological being who attempted to be God, there seems to be parallelism between the ancient cosmic fall and more recently earthly falls of human kings. Staged as these are, they imply that the falls of human kings serve as reflexes of an older cosmic fall and may even appear in Ezekiel's mind to stem from that early fall. It seems plausible to suggest that these two laments in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 12 can be viewed as texts that be added to the list of other passages to the study of the cosmic conflict.
Thank you, Jean. I appreciate it. It's difficult.